Hi everybody, it's Here with the Birds, back with another Shadowlands video. Hope you're enjoying the new reset. We are jumping into a De Other Side +5 just to show you how things are shaking out as we get going with early eye levels on Holy Paladin. And you can see the talents on the right side of the screen, including the eye level and stats for my character in this run. I'm still using focused light as my conduit at the moment just to make sure I can guarantee some good procs of infusion. I get a little bit of lag throughout the dungeon. I think it might be partly to do with the servers and partly to do with my internet. But you can see here significant amounts of damage coming out as we head into our Mythic Plus sets. So just be aware, guys, when you're starting to push some keys in the early days that it's going to be a little chunky. So mostly I'm going to be commenting as we move through about how to deal with this with the virtue setup that we have going on. I think it plays very well if your group is going to be taking mechanics or learning fights or trying to push very high keys with low eye level. You can see at 176 eye level, we're kind of low here, although my tank I think is in about 185. So the tank as a DK is still getting just completely whacked, and so we're going to have to focus a little bit more attention on single target. Having said that, I think this is just an excellent dungeon to show you, because of the burst healing required at these eye levels, all the mistakes that are being made are things that you'll probably typically see going into this season unless you're with a really excellent group. So just be aware, guys, I'm not the best player, and you probably aren't either if you're watching these videos. And that's not to say anything poor about you. It's just to kind of tell the truth about who we are and then work with the tools we have based on that. You can see I'm getting a bit of lag spikes on my internet. This is from the video footage itself. So some things to note going into this week. We have, I think it's not tyrannical, we have fortified week and bursting. So bursting is the little blue debuff that shows up after a mob dies, and it does damage, there it is right there, to the entire group, but it's pretty insignificant at a Mythic +5. I'll try to show you if we get our +10 done tonight, what it's like on a +10, but I think it's fairly insignificant. However, as you just saw there, guys, the mobs hit really hard, so we're going to want to be very careful on our CC, and I think it's probably okay to pull big mobs, because Virtue is really excellent for dealing with burst healing, but you'll want to make sure you're CCing, our totems from our shaman here, making sure our warrior shouts to fear and ice stun and all that kind of good stuff that we're used to seeing. We keep going here. There's a couple of moments like this in the dungeon where we just bite off a little more than we can chew, not totally prepared for the damage intake coming in on the tank specifically, so be aware of that. One of the problems, of course, for Holy Paladin actually is not the AoE throughput healing. That's the one that everyone talks about if you're playing Glimmer. The real problem, in my opinion, with Holy Paladin is trying to top off tanks when you're outside of wings. So we have tools like Sacrifice, which is excellent, but if you're playing Glimmer, it's gonna be tough to manage your own health. And Sacrifice is gonna be a big key for keeping the tank going in these kinds of pulls when they're getting thumped by 6 or 7 mobs. But yikes, the lag's pretty bad. I apologize, guys. It gets a little bit better as the video goes on. But Holy Paladin, generally speaking, is going to struggle to top the tank with just Holy Shocks and Word of Glories. Word of Glories hit for a nice amount, but if they don't crit, guys, you don't really have any go-tos, and you'll find yourself either Holy Lighting or Flash of Lighting your tank quite a lot in these dungeons just to keep them up. And one of the nice things about Virtue is it takes the pressure off having to cast tons and tons of Flash of Lights all around the raid, moving back and forth between them while the health of your tank bounces around. You can focus big Holy Lights with Inflorescence, Legendary, into your tanks, and know that as that Holy Light is going down, if somebody else in your group takes damage, you can put a Virtue on one of the other tunes, and it will just instantly bring them back with your Holy Light cast. So be prepared to top off your tanks this week with Fortified. It's a little bit dubious on some of the bigger pulls when we have no gear. You can see here we're still trying to do our best to add damage, but one of the benefits of playing Virtue from a ranged kit, meaning we're playing with Inflorescence, is that we have the opportunity to move out of mechanics and still do a fair amount of healing from ranged. So be encouraged, guys. If you're in these kinds of dungeons where you have a bunch of stuff you have to do to move out, or if you're heading into Nathria later this evening, where there's lots of movement required for some of those fights and you might get a mechanic, you don't have to sweat it if you're playing the Holy Light build, because you can work your way back into melee and be confident that you have some powerful heals going forward. I'm hoping to get some footage of Beacon of Virtue in a raid setting just to test it out. I don't think it is by any means ideal, though I do kind of want to see it so I can bring that to your attention and you can see for yourself what the tool looks like in a larger group. So yeah, my main takeaway at the moment going into mid-level Mythic Pluses for our eye level right now is watch the tank. Be prepared to use your sack liberally, get your Divine Toll going liberally, but also as soon as your tank starts taking damage past 50% of their health, just throw Virtue on them. And why would we do that? Well, the reason is it guarantees that the next 3 or 4 casts that you do will also be activated on somebody else in the group. So if they take a lot of burst damage, you don't suddenly have to change your attention. You can just focus on healing the tank up in that moment. And it's sort of like a reverse of the regular way we think about Beacon as a Holy Paladin. Most of the time we think I can heal somebody else and it will help to top off the tank. But in this case, you can just throw your Virtue onto the tank and guarantee that as you're healing the tank, you build Holy Power, and anyone else that might be getting hurt is also going to get healed. So my advice is use Virtue very liberally. Just cast it out as soon as your tank is getting to 50%. The casts that you are putting on your tank aren't going to be that much better, but it will guarantee that anybody else who gets hit by a mechanic is instantly topped off with your spells. Just note here on the other side, these guys enrage and they do a lot of damage to your tank, so watch for that. There's a couple of sets of those kinds of burst moments on your tank, and so just be careful. Also, the drill is probably going to be a bit of a problem, so you'll want to watch for that as well. Haywire's not too bad because you can line it. It's really a nothing mechanic in Mythic Plus. I think we could probably heal through it. We were sort of talking about do we want to test out the damage, but we decided not to. And that's fine. These mobs are a little bit more annoying. You'll see they put a little area effect that you have to take out, and it gets a bit hairy. So again, just as soon as your tank starts taking damage, toss your Virtue out. When you're outside of wings, guys, it's going to be really difficult to top everybody else off when you're putting heals into your tank. So just be prepared for those kinds of moments. Use your Avenging Wrath liberally. I'm playing Awakening now just to kind of feel how it is. I think it's great. Just a nice passive benefit, and it works well with the kit, with the extra procs of Holy Power, and with all the Holy Power generation that you get in a dungeon. So here I was sacking my tank there just to make sure they're okay. Again, you can add damage. Don't be too worried about it though in the early days. Focus your attention on healing. That's why you're in the dungeon, and for the most part, guys, for those of us who aren't pushing really insane keys, we want to be at attention for the people that are going to get one shot or take 2 ticks of an ability, that kind of stuff. We're looking to be the person who can stand in the gap when our DPS get a hit. So just watch for that. Don't be too excited to get in and drop your consecration. It's fine. Do some damage, fine, but don't worry too much that you're letting your group down if you're not Crusader striking every CD. I think some of our guys try to run through these sludges here and they get completely wrecked. It's pretty entertaining. Mostly I'm finding Paladin really easy, guys. This is again, I'm in 176 gear or something like that, so we don't even have Mythic 0 completely geared out, and there was like absolutely no problems with a lot of the burst damage coming out, except for that one pull where my tank, I think she was either out of CDs or we just didn't plan it very well. But the regular AoE damage that comes out is easily dealt with. You can see within a GCD everyone is topped and you can go back to damage. That's the other thing I kind of want to comment on for those who are concerned about playing with Virtue, thinking that they lose out on a lot of damage. You can still throw your Holy Shocks into your enemies instead of healing your allies with it. And one of the things that's lovely about Virtue is it allows you to be offensive far longer without worrying that your allies are going to immediately flop, because you know that you can just lean on Virtue at any moment. And you can see, guys, how fast the CD of this comes back. It's basically 7-8 seconds of downtime for Virtue. So I like it for that reason. If you want to add damage, you can, wings on pull with Lust and do your full combo into the boss or into the dungeon bosses. And then when things get a little bit hairy, you just take 2 GCDs, Virtue, Shock, or Word of Glory, or you toss up a Holy Light, 2-second cast into Virtue, and everyone's topped. What do? Go back to damage. You don't have to worry about spending 9 GCDs, Holy Shocking, and Flash of Lighting all of the people in your raid. I think this is a good example of it, me just kind of pounding the boss with damage. What are we doing here? Something like 1.5. Not really that great if we're really counting things, but it's decent for what we're doing here in a Mythic 5. The point is, Virtue's great for just switching gears back and forth. If you need to do damage, you can lean on it anytime you want. So Maleficent does the bombs. Make sure you get those out. Those do quite a lot of damage at this stage in Mythic Plus. Our Boomkin, of course, is on it. He knows what's going on. And you can see here again, tank damage is going to be a little bit rough. So just watch for it. Those of you who are not playing Kyrian, I want to encourage you that I've been trying to hold off on Toll until I hit that sort of threshold of emergency, which usually corresponds with a really large hit. And so I have my GCD for Virtue, and then I'm going to press my Toll because I have no Holy Power. Those are the sort of conditions that I'm looking at using it. I've been trying to hold it off just to see, can we push healing and throughput especially without leaning on this tool? What if I was throwing Vanquisher's Hammers out there? What if I was Venthyr and dropping big pools of awesomeness? Can we make this work with just Virtue? And I think the answer largely is yes. Meaning you don't have to sweat it too much if you decide not to go Kyrian. It's an awesome get me out of jail free tool, and I am still going to lean on it heavily, but I can see a lot of moments where Virtue is going to do all the same kind of work with 5 Holy Power. You can see here we're just plowing heals into our guys. We have Virtue again, and then we just top everyone, guys. Look at this. What are we at here? We're pushing 6.5k HPS into that. Excellent stuff. You should be really encouraged. You're going to have people take lots of hits in these early days in Mythic Plus as they get used to all the weird mechanics going on. Don't be afraid of it, guys. It's pretty powerful. The other element to Virtue that really strikes me as interesting is you can do really large pulls if you want. You saw there throwing 5 CDs into the Virtue window, all of which are going to top the raid, either a Holy Light, a Word of Glory, a Holy Shock. You can do some really large pulls with this. So if you're Venthyr, you can also tag on even bigger pulls, put your pool down, off you go. Probably the same kind of thing for Vanquisher, because you get the double use. Here's where I test the waters here. It was a bad it was a bad time. I think I'm at 2% health there. That's really awkward. Don't get hit by that, guys. I'm a joke. Anyway, so yeah, if you're gonna play with Vanquisher's Hammer, you can do big pulls with that too, just lining up your really nice uses of Vanquisher's Hammer to correspond with the damage threshold. Just be careful about aiming Light of Dawn. It's not quite as good in a dungeon, obviously, as Kyrian, but it's going to shine a little bit better in raid settings. So Virtue, again, makes use of all of that stuff. It'll transform your Word of Glory, Light of Dawn combo into insane burst healing, especially if you're pointing your Light of Dawn at the right area. So try some bigger pulls. Holy Paladin, guys, is the de facto burst AoE healer. You heard it here first. Everyone will laugh at you and say, no, they're not. It's garbage, but you can see the footage for yourself. People's HP bars being resolved within a few GCDs easily, and we could have pulled a lot harder. We do have this crazy pull up here where somebody, I think the tank throws their diseases down the hill at one of the mobs. I think we'll see, and the mobs decide to run all the way around and pick up all the trash on the way. It's pretty hilarious. anyways, just be encouraged, guys. I'm really excited for where Paladin is right now. Would I say, is it better than Druid if you want to push really big keys? I don't know if that's the case. Druid has a few things that Paladin does not, especially with Convoke. You can sort of force a lot of damage into bosses specifically, so that gives them a bit more flexibility, especially on Tyrannical. Whereas a Paladin has to convert a lot of their holy power into the same type of effect. So I still love Druid, but guys, this has been so fun, and I feel really free. I never feel out of control, except for when my tank is getting like really pounded and I don't have wings up. Then I'm a little bit nervous and I have to adjust playstyle. But especially with Inflorescence, guys, you're throwing really meaty heals with your infusion, even if you don't have wings, and you can always just press your wings button to make sure that everyone makes it through. One note on bursting, obviously it can be dispelled now, which means priests are going to have a much better time in Mythic Plus. You can bubble, you can bop, you can dispel yourself, a single target. It doesn't hit very hard in Mythic 5, as you can see here, but just be aware that you do have some tools to deal with that, rather than bursting being something that you just cannot control and must heal through. It's better to hit probably in I think a 7 or 8 or up. It's probably better to hit your tank with a dispel right away to make sure the stacks don't build up too high. So we're just moving our way down here. We get to the part where our tank pulls in an awkward way. We can see as we're moving towards this boss, we get up to the point where you have to start thinking about percentage. I think we're a little bit behind here. So we're trying to figure out what to grab. Here goes the DK. And these end up padding all the way up to us. We're sort of nonchalantly grabbing them, and then suddenly you have birds, and then suddenly you have more birds to my right coming up. So there really wasn't much opportunity for us to get through this, but I could see a place where we might have been able to if I'd been paying attention. Could have had a cap totem and then tried chain stun. It would have been interesting, but for my money, I still think the burst from Virtue would have helped us to carry through killing those guys a little bit more. So let's see if we jump ahead a little bit. Move back down toward the boss. Now we're on the boss fight, and you can see here people are screwing up mechanics, including myself, I think. So we missed out on one of the portals to go up for the bombs. And in Mythic 5, there's a little bit of excess damage coming out, but more than that, there was probably 4 or 5 different mistakes that were made. And I can't stress enough, guys, just be careful of trying to play on the razor's edge. People are going to make mistakes, you included, and if you have no recourse or no tools to deal with it, it's going to be tough. Rule of law here can probably be subbed out for other things, but I just want to get used to actually pressing the button so that when I use it a bit more in the raid environments, it makes sense as a tool, and I have a more intuitive flow. You generally speaking want to press Rule of Law before you do your precast Holy Light, so Rule of Law, Holy Light into Virtue, and that'll be especially true when you are casting on ranged people. So in other words, if you wait to cast Rule of Law after your Holy Light, you don't get to have that nice sweet combo of Holy Light into Virtue with all of the range stuff that goes along with it. This is another fight where there's a lot of damage going out and a lot of opportunity for people to screw up. You can see I put things in the wrong place. I have to do catch up a little bit. We haven't blown toll yet, so we're still doing pretty good on the whole, meaning if you aren't playing Kyrian, you can be encouraged here that the tools you need outside of Virtue are not that significant quite yet. And then we just do our regular thing of taking down the boss, trying to kill, I think we tried to one phase it, but one person went to the wrong portal, so we ended up having to do 2. Other than that, this fight I think is actually going to be pretty straightforward, particularly on Fortified, when the mobs are the big deal. This one, you can probably see people one phasing this every time, even on high keys, because you'll have the gear to do it. One Tyrannical, I think it's going to be a bit of a different story. So Tyrannical, I imagine every single swing is a one-shot, so if you don't do the dance in front of the boss correctly, you'll die, and the damage coming up from the dots and from this ability here, Cosmic Artifice, is likely going to be really restrictive for you. So you can see I get hit probably 3 times in this fight, just getting the patterns down in my mind. But after this we phase it. I want to encourage you guys, just a first look at Holy Paladin with the kind of ranged or inflorescence build. You can do a lot at ranged, you can use Rule of Law, and here it's just quite effective. Beacon of Virtue, just such a good stabilizing piece. Use it effectively, use it as much as you can, guys, and it'll really help to carry those dungeons in the early days when people are not totally sure what to do, and they are perhaps learning mechanics or relearning mechanics that they had never thought was of any significance. So if you have questions, please leave them below. I'd love to hear how your first travails are going in Mythic Plus, and let me know how Nathria is going for you guys as well. I'll try to get some more footage for you of that as well. Have a good one, guys. We'll see you next time.